Well, it's a rather overcloudy Monday, but Budapest is feeling a lot cooler than it has been recently. We are at about 30 degrees. There was supposed to be rain today. It rained for about 30 seconds, then it's gone. And unfortunately, we need rain because the Danube continues to fall. Now, as you know, we are having issues with the Danube, and because we're having issues with the level of the Danube, we are having difficulties in Hungary cooling our nuclear power station in the town of Paks, which is about 100 kilometers south of Budapest. Our Prime Minister Peter Magyar has been down in Paks, 100 kilometers south of Budapest, micromanaging an operation to artificially raise the level of the Danube by sinking two barges and tethering them to the floor of the Danube. So the barges, I think, are maybe 80 meters long, and they're also dropping in big concrete blocks using helicopters. Several members of opposition parties have been calling this whole thing utterly theatrical. Towards the end of last week, Peter Magyar said he invited the leaders of the opposition parties down to Paks to come check out the situation. Now, this included our ex-Prime Minister Viktor Magyar, who declined the invitation, and it also included Toroczkai, who is the leader of Mihazánk. Now, he, in a post, said that he hasn't had a holiday all summer long, and he's taken his family, his two daughters, on a flight that he paid for himself out of his own pocket to go somewhere on holiday. Over the last weekend, however, Peter Magyar has brought up the name of Toroczkai over and over and over again, saying he's gone on holiday. I can't believe he's gone on holiday. Well, he should be here, but he's gone on holiday. Now, Mihazánk did send someone in his place. They sent an expert to do with rivers and waters and dams and the such. That man was not allowed on site because, according to Peter Magyar, the invitation is non-transferable, so it's only for those leaders themselves. Now, you should know that Viktor Orbán is likely never going to appear in the same place as Peter Magyar, no matter what happens, because Peter Magyar is only going to do one thing, and that's point the finger at Viktor Orbán and say, this is all your fault, you suck, this is all your fault. So that's never going to happen. But what is strange is that, again, we seem to have an issue here in Hungary where Peter Magyar is very, very keen on his cult of personality, if I'm honest. So there's lots of posts on Facebook, there's lots of pictures of him, there's lots of heroic imagery of him sort of looking at helicopters doing stuff, and it's all just designed, I think, to keep a positive shine on his name. We should remember that on August the 3rd, at a press conference, when Peter Magyar was asked, hey, shouldn't you maybe be doing something about the level of the water in the Danube? Peter Magyar said, well, there's nothing we can do. And then last Monday, so a week ago, Toroczkai, the head of Mihazánk, after listening to a speech given by Peter Magyar in Parliament where he just said that everything is Fidesz's fault, which is what he always does, he asked, well, how come if Romania has brought in the army to raise the level of the Danube where their nuclear power station is, why haven't we done anything like that? And that obviously hit home because just 2 days later, Peter Magyar has launched into this big operation to raise the level of the water. Now, in some sense, better late than never, but it's a little bit worrying that we have a leader who is advertising himself as totally in control and he knows what's going on and he runs a government full of experts. Yet the Minister of Water, well, she seemed to disappear. She went on holiday, but actually she didn't, or did she? Well, she did, basically. And both her boss, the Minister of the Environment, I want to say, and also the Prime Minister effectively defended her and said, no, she was totally doing her job, which is actually a lie. So they both lied. And even though now we apparently have this cabinet which is headed by experts in all their respective fields, why is it that it needs a member of the opposition to point at the leadership and say, well, why don't you just copy one of the countries around us? It's in some sense just ridiculous. It's not a surprise to see that the popularity of Mihazánk is going up, but it's a little bit annoying and a little bit uncomfortable to start to realize that, hang on, we have a Prime Minister who's very, very keen on his image, and we don't really have a cabinet that's filled with experts at all because we're always behind the game. We're not ahead of what's going on. We're just reacting rather than being proactive. So rather worrying. Still, the Danube continues to fall. We are, again, I think 15 centimeters away from having another turbine shut off. And there are no rains really projected for the future. So things, I think, are going to go from bad to perhaps worse. I hope I'm wrong. If you like my stuff, give me a like, give me a share. Thanks.